Hello, everybody. Thanks for attending our live cast again. Today, again, Sabrina Allen is going to join us. We're going to talk about foreclosures and the good, the bad, the ugly. And just so happens we just had, coincidence, we had decided to talk about this earlier, but after our live cast last week, we did have a note go to foreclosure. And so that's something that we can discuss. Before we get started, though, I would like to thank some people. Dan Carter, Wendy Zapardi, Ed Cotter, Karen Peterson, Mark Howard, Myron Butler, Stas Finnelt, Doug Miller, Michael Murray, Imran Sarab, Zaya Galana, and Muzal Mohammed. I'd like to thank all you guys for your emails this week and suggestions on what to cover. That's very, very helpful, and I thank you for it. One of the big challenges in doing these live casts every week is coming up with topics that you're interested in. And I hope everybody saw the email that was sent out, that a survey was completed about what people were looking for in topics. So that's very, very helpful for us to put these things together if we know what it is you're interested in talking about. And since this is firsthand of what experience we have and what we actually do in running our business, I think it's very helpful if we know what it is that you guys are looking for. So again, thank you to those people that responded this week. And so let's get Sabrina on the screen here, and we'll get started. So
good afternoon, good morning, everyone.
We're trying to get your picture up here and get me off. So just a second.
Okay.
We hear you, but there you are. Okay, great. All right. So Sabrina just got back from Florida, where she was meeting with some people, and we lost her again. Hold on. We want her up, not me.
You can stay up. They can just hear my voice.
Yeah, I know, but I like your picture a lot better than mine. So we like to have 20-year-olds on the screen.
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay. There we go. All right. So, Sabrina, today we're going to talk about foreclosures, the good, the bad, foreclosures from a position of firsts, and then again talking about the foreclosures as a when you're in a second position. So I guess the first thing that we need to do is explain to everybody what a judicial and what a non-judicial state is, so that everybody is on the same page. So you want to start out just by kind of give us the definition of a foreclosure and the difference between a judicial and a non-judicial state.
Well, to make things simple, one takes a lot longer than the other, much longer. So let's talk about Texas. Texas, you can be in and out in foreclosure in 45 days tops, from the time the demand letter goes to the borrower to the time that the sale is set. 45 days, and sometimes shorter than that, depending on when the demand letter goes out to the borrower. That's really quick, and it doesn't matter if it's first or second position. That's the time. And we'll use Ohio and Florida for the good old long states that you go on forever and ever and ever. It could take 18 months, 24 months to foreclose unless you have a good attorney that knows how to press things through. We do have an attorney that can reduce some of that time down in Florida. Not so much in Ohio, but it's a matter of understanding and knowing the time frames that are involved when you start things. The other thing that's really key when you're hiring an attorney, you need to make sure that they honor Freddie and Fannie rates and if they're going to be able to do those rates for you, and also if they will be willing to do things a la carte.
Before you go on, can you explain what Freddie and Fannie are and what their, when you said, do they honor their rates? Can you explain that? Some people may not know what that means.
Well, Freddie and Fannie are government-backed loans, and they're operated by the government, and the government is basically put out a price point on what they're willing to pay for foreclosures. So when you're engaging with an attorney and you're wanting to hire them, that should be one of your first questions. Do you honor Freddie and Fannie rates? And if they tell you yes, are you willing to give me those rates as an independent customer so I can bring my business to you to represent me as an investor for foreclosure? Sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no. But if they tell you yes, make sure you get an engagement letter from that attorney in writing so you don't get blindsided by what your fees are going to be 6 months down the line when you think that your foreclosure cost is only going to be $2,500 because you're looking at the Freddie and Fannie chart that you can find online. And those of you who attended our boot camp, we actually provided that chart and those price points for you. So if you go to your reference guide, you would be able to see that.
Okay,
so
great.
That's really important.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt what you were saying there, but I just know that there's some people on that have not been involved in any foreclosures yet. So Texas, 45 days, that is a non-judicial state. Can you just explain the definition of what a non-judicial versus a judicial?
Well, a judicial, you're going to go through the courts. You have to go through the courts, and there's going to be a judge involved in a judicial. And a non-judicial is normally a trustee is involved, and sometimes those sales could happen right on the court steps.
Okay.
That's really the difference.
All right. Okay. So let's continue then. So from our point of view, there are good and bads to both the short term and the long term. For example, I went on vacation and lost a house in Texas. I didn't even know it was going to foreclosure by the time vacation was over. The house was sold at auction. So in that regard, we were second holders. In that regard, the shortness of the foreclosure is a detriment if you're a second holder and the first forecloses. On the other hand, if you're the guy foreclosing, it's very attractive, correct? And then the good part of a long one is there's things that we can do. So let's just, first of all, maybe we could go through the steps of a foreclosure in both a judicial and non-judicial state, and just the process of what you need to do, and then maybe discuss some options if something does go to foreclosure. Okay.
So one of the things, and I'll keep going back to Ohio because it's an easy state, or Florida, because a lot of us have a lot of loans there. So I want to make reference to something that makes sense. So sometimes you can send a legal demand, or you can call the note, which is severely delinquent, and that would actually go out from an attorney. And sometimes those letters can be anywhere from 30 to 90 days, giving them the right to cure their loan. So during that time, when you send that letter, you can't just send a file to an attorney without the appropriate documentation. So that's key, whether it's judicial or non-judicial. There are key documents that you need to include when you send that file over, even if you just want a demand sent. You need to make sure that you send a copy of the note, the mortgage, or the deed of trust over to the attorney. You need to also make sure that you have any endorsements, such as allonges and assignments, and there's no break in the assignment chain in order for the attorney to move forward with the foreclosure action or the legal demand part. So you can't just calculate all of your arrearages and tell the attorney you want to send this to a borrower. So you also, when you send it over, you have to calculate what the arrearages are. You have to have a current address for the borrower if the borrower is not occupying the property. Also make sure that you do a bankruptcy check before you send it over, because the attorney is going to charge you for one anyway, so just don't waste that money sending a file over, and you can't move forward with your foreclosure action because the borrower is in a chapter 13 or 7. If a borrower is in an active 13 or a 7, you cannot move forward with a demand or any type of foreclosure. So once you get that part of it done, and us in the second space, sometimes all we need to do is send a demand letter from an attorney to wake up the borrower. So once that's done, they have time to cure their delinquency or at least make contact with you. Most of the time in our world, they don't have enough money to cure the delinquency, so they can engage with us for a forbearance agreement, not a modification, but a forbearance agreement. So that's kind of where we start off with when you hear demand or legal demand or breach letter, because there's a couple different terminologies or verbiages that we use to actually put the borrower on notice and the intent to foreclose. Then once that happens, then we want to move forward with the foreclosure. The attorney will then prepare a judgment for us in the judicial state, and they will prepare that for us. And at the time they prepare that, sometimes we get that $2,500 or $5,000 bill, which is a big hike from the demand letter or the breach letter, which could run you anywhere from $50 to $300, depending on the state. That process will take some time once you actually get a copy of that judgment and actually put that into the court system, because now you actually have to wait for your judgment to actually be accepted in the courts.
Okay, and what's the time period for that in Ohio?
It all depends on the county. Some counties are really, really quick, and other counties it's really, really long. Cuyahoga County, sometimes you could wait up to 6 months just to get that judgment entry in there.
Okay.
Sometimes it's even longer than that. Depends on the docket. We are drowning in this, in this country with foreclosures. And our end result, even though we're talking about foreclosure, we're giving you tools to make yourself powerful. But at the end result, at the end of the day, we don't want to foreclose. We just want the borrowers to work with us. So I want to reinforce that as we have this conversation.
Okay. I think we have published a pie chart of like our history and what happens to the notes. And I think on our pie chart, it's like 2% actually go to foreclosure. And that isn't divided between judicial or non-judicial. And by the way, just for the people out there's information, about half the states, and they're usually on the eastern side of the United States, are judicial states that do require a court action. And then about half the states are trustee states, non-judicial states, where you don't have to go to court, but a trustee handles the foreclosure, and they're a lot quicker. We haven't divided them up that way, but only about 2% of our loans ever go to foreclosure. So Sabrina, could you kind of give us an idea of what would cause us to actually go through a foreclosure versus not going to foreclosure? When would we go all the way through the process?
Sometimes if we see emotional equity, if we see equity in the property and the borrower is just non-responsive, if a borrower has a high credit score, so that requires you to do a little bit of due diligence on your borrower and on your file. And it's looked at on an individual basis, because some of these things you can't just see by looking at a spreadsheet on which ones you send to foreclosure and which ones you don't. It's not always a matter of how many days past due the borrower is. It's basically setting priorities in your portfolio to make your portfolio successful. And sometimes they just need a little bit of a motivation in order to be able to respond to you. If you've sent a door knocker out, you've sent a welcome package out, you've sent a hardship package out, and you sent letter after letter and call after call, and they're not responsive, sometimes you don't have any other choice but to foreclose.
Okay. And I think one thing also that a lot of people that maybe have never bought a note don't realize that if we are the bank, if we're the lender, that most often they will insist upon a full restitution. They want all of their arrearages and they want a full payment to start up before they will not foreclose. That in order to forestall foreclosure, they want to be paid. Where on the other hand, with us, because we did buy this loan at a discount, we have all kinds of workout plans that we can do with a homeowner so that there isn't that financial burden that they just cannot meet. So while a bank may only have the alternative of foreclosing, we certainly have a lot more opportunities to work with the homeowner. And we use foreclosure or the threat of foreclosure in most cases only to get the homeowner to talk to us, that all of a sudden they know we're serious, that they need to start talking. So let's discuss now the same process, but in a non-judicial state like California, Arizona, Nevada, most of the Western United States.
So I'm going to kind of tell you about something that we did on one of our files, and I think it was in Arizona. We initiated a foreclosure on a property that was underwater to get the homeowner's attention. And, she gets on the phone. She tells us, this is completely underwater, and she's a mortgage broker. This property is completely underwater. This just doesn't make sense. She doesn't understand why we're doing it. And she didn't like me, and she'd rather talk to Chrissy because I was being mean to her. And long story short, when we really looked at the numbers, and I'm looking at a picture of her house online, and it's gorgeous, but it doesn't make sense because the first is way underwater. She's a little bit more of a sophisticated borrower. So Chrissy and I had a conversation, and we dismissed the foreclosure action, but we scared her enough for her to start communicating with us. So I'm going to turn this around, and even though she didn't like me 3 weeks ago, I called her over the weekend, and she called me back, and I missed her. So I'm going to call her, and I'm going to tell her, even though I've picked up your file, and it's now it's my file, I would love to work with you. Because realistically, for us, it doesn't make sense to complete the foreclosure process. Even though we did it, we got her attention, and I don't know where this is going to go. But sometimes we do have to make a business decision that it just doesn't make sense. This area is not in a declining area. It's a very nice area. She's making payments on her first. Her taxes are current. So our loan is not going anywhere. And I hope that I'm able to work something out with her where we don't have to stick it in a drawer and wait to start foreclosure again in a couple years. But this is a prime example on we started foreclosure because there were some things that we saw, which was the emotional equity, because the curb appeal was gorgeous. And still, it just didn't make sense because of that quick process to take something back at sale that we were going to have to, assume the responsibility of the first or satisfy the first before we made any money. So that demand letter and starting that process, and I think we used Jack O'Boyle's office for that, but don't quote me. Either them or Trustee Corp. I can't remember which two, but it was great to be able to make the contact with Trustee Corp and say, could you close this file? And thank you very much, because we do have her attention, and she will call us back.
What did we spend? If you have an idea, what did we spend in order to get to that point? In this, by the way, Arizona, a non-judicial state, we're using a trustee. Do you know whether it be Trustee Corp or Jack O'Boyle, what our costs would have been, so that people kind of get an idea of what it costs in a trustee state to just get to that point?
Well, don't quote me on this, but from beginning to end probably anywhere from $1,200 to $1,700, maybe $2,200, depending on which company we use. But for them to send the demand out, it's very minimal cost. Then the court costs, whatever the fees and costs are, and the cost of some paperwork. So I think Trustee Corp and Jack O'Boyle's office allow us to pay them a la carte, so we don't have to come up with the whole amount all at once.
Right.
So sorry, don't quote me on the.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just that, let's say that we did, let's say that we averaged the two together and we said, okay, we spent $1,500 on this foreclosure to get to the point that we are. The reason that we would be willing to spend $1,500 and then quit is because when you looked at the home and the status of the first, you realize this woman is not leaving her house. So, so we needed to spend that money to get her to know that we were very, very serious about what we were doing. And in reality, all we want to do is work with her. And so now it appears that that's going to happen. And if somebody has emotional equity in the house, and if they are willing to work with us, there is no way that we won't work with them. And people that are on the livecast ought to take that into consideration. You're buying these loans at such a discount that if the homeowner wants to work with you, you can find a way to do it. And foreclosure is a tool that is used very often, but the tool is normally not taken to the end. So in Arizona, how long is a foreclosure lasting these days?
This one was pretty quick, but this one, I don't know, but I think we had postponed it a couple of times. So we had some, there was some lag time in reference to how long it took. But really, roughly, if you do everything from beginning to end, I think it's probably roughly 60 days.
All right. And then in California, it's for example, it's 111 days from the time that you send out the default notice and publish it until the sale date. That's the quickest it can happen in California. And then Texas, like Sabrina said, 45 days. Actually, the statute is 21 days, but it rarely would go 21 days, but it could. And if you are a second holder, you need to be aware of that and be constantly vigilant about what the first is doing. So okay, now we kind of understand what foreclosure is, and we do foreclose at certain times, especially, let's say, if the homeowner is just totally fed up and they don't want to do anything anymore, and maybe even it's vacant, they've left the property. So we foreclose. Now what?
Well, you just made another key point that I also want to talk about: states that have redemption rights.
Okay.
Michigan has a redemption right, and you said something else too, that if a property is vacant in the state of Michigan, you can actually shorten your redemption period. So in any state that has a redemption period, Michigan's redemption period is 6 months. But if you find that the property is vacant, you can actually file a motion in court and shorten the redemption period. That's really, really important. But the other thing you also need to realize is when you're bidding in those states that have redemption rights, you need to make sure that you're covering your loan balance, because if you think that the borrower is not paying attention, in my past experience, I've had 3 borrowers basically go back and redeem their property for what we paid for it at sale, and we had no recourse. So we might have only bid $21,000 on a $100,000 note because the property was vacant. And guess what the homeowner did? They came and they redeemed their property for $21,000 and moved back in, and there was nothing we could do. We couldn't even pursue a deficiency balance or anything. So that's something else that I want to talk about. Know your redemption states, know your rights in the redemption period, and also think about your bidding instructions when you are actually bidding in a state that has redemption rights.
Okay. And redemption simply means that they have the right for a period of time to pay you off and come back into the house. So, okay, let's say that we foreclose, the redemption period isn't a consideration, or it's over, or the house was vacant. Once we own the house, even subject to the first, let's say, what can we do?
We can do a lot of things. We can rent it out. We can continue to pay the first. Sometimes that's always a challenge depending on the first lien holder, to get them to give you that information. But if you're persistent and you show that you actually are the second lien holder, they're a little bit more cooperative, but not all the time. It just depends. You can actually sell the property knowing that you have to cure the first in order to sell that property. You can resecure the property if it's been vacant, meaning resecure, you can change the locks, you can put new locks on the property. If there's anything hazardous in the property, you can clean it out. But in your clean out process, if there are any valuables in that property, when you enter into a property for your own safety and security, make sure that you take photos of every single room in that house, what was there when you found it, or the property preservation company that you used to do that. If there's any valuables, I would recommend that you actually move them to one part of the house, take photos of them, or you move them to the garage until you are completely finished with your eviction process, so the homeowner can't come back to sue you.
Okay. That's a good point. People would not think about that at all. They think, I own the house now, I can do with it what I want. We actually do have homes rented. I think the last one that we did, the last one we foreclosed on and rented, is in New Jersey. Again, another 2-year process to foreclose. So if the first were to start foreclosure today, we probably have 2 years of rental before that house is going to get foreclosed on by the first. So that's an opportunity. The other thing is now we're in a lot better position to short sale, right? Because now we own the house, but we're not on the loan. So we're in a better negotiating process, posture with the bank, the lender, than the homeowner was. The homeowner was at their mercy. We're pretty much not. We have a lot stronger position to possibly do a short sale than the original homeowner did. So is there anything else about foreclosures that you think need to be discussed today, and anything else that the viewer might need if they are thinking about foreclosure, or they're worried about it and they want to know because they are?
Well, one of the other things is manage your attorneys or manage your servicer who makes you put your files with them for full servicing while they're in the foreclosure process. You need to make sure that if you don't understand that particular state that you're foreclosing in, go online, or make the attorney walk you through what they're going to do and set those expectations up front. And if they're supposed to do something in 90 days, the 91st day when you don't hear from them, you need to send them an email and remind them, we actually discussed when I hired you at 91 days, you were going to do X, Y, and Z. Also know what those costs are going to be and manage your attorney so you're not blindsided by anything that you're doing in the process of your file. So I think that that's one thing that I want to also reinforce with anyone who's not really understanding, or maybe they don't know how to handle the attorney and feel like, well, I've hired this attorney and I'm at their mercy. Well, no, you're not. You can also fire an attorney at any given time, even if the foreclosure is in process. They just have to file a motion for substitute of counsel, and you can actually still move through and move forward with your foreclosure if you're not happy with your attorney. Never feel like you can't fire an attorney because they're working on something for you and you're not getting the results you want.
And that's if it's a judicial state, you must hire an attorney licensed in that state to do a foreclosure, correct?
Yes.
You can't not hire an attorney. That's the process. There's a lawsuit involved. When in a non-judicial state, there are trustees such as Trustee Corps and Jack Boyle they act as trustees, and they have the authority to sell the house if the homeowner defaults. And it's a much easier and less expensive process, and it goes a lot faster. So anything else, Sabrina, that needs to be discussed concerning foreclosures?
No, I think we might have some questions, and probably we'll need to touch on this subject again, because this is only 30 minutes and there's a lot to cover in the foreclosure process. And this is just a broad view, overview of what some things that you can run into with foreclosure. We are at your disposal. We're willing to be able to, we're willing to assist you in any way that we can, but we probably will get hit with a lot of questions, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And
I hope so. I hope so, because we want them comfortable with it. So I guess a big question that I would leave the viewers with, or I'm hoping leaving with an answer, is foreclosure something to be really frightened about, to keep you from buying a note? Is it something that you think about on a daily basis? Oh my God, how many are going to file foreclosure today, and so on? Can you just give me your feelings from both an asset manager and also a note owner?
No, I think it's just part of the process. It's something that you have to do. It's no different than thinking about actually doing a forbearance agreement. It's an action that's required in your loan portfolio. This is something you may have to do. It just makes you, I think twice about how you engage with your borrowers. Never threaten to foreclose if you never have any intentions on doing so. You're not allowed to do that. FDCPA frowns upon that. That's a violation of FDCPA. But it's just another process. It's a process that costs you a little bit of money. So make sure that when you're looking to buy loans, that you actually set aside for legal costs in case you have to foreclose. And as long as you're prepared financially, it's a waiting game and it's a time factor involved, and that at the end of the day, the asset will either sell at sale to a third party or it will revert back to you. And it's just really as simple as that. Okay.
Well, thank you. And I do hope that people that have questions about foreclosure, and I know that they do, will please send them in via email. We'll be happy to answer them. Sabrina is very knowledgeable on the subjects, has gone through a lot of them over the course of her career. So it's unlikely that she would see something that she hasn't seen before. We've gone through a number of foreclosures. We have a number of homes that we now own, subject to the first, that we're doing something with. We're in various stages of either a short sale or rental or whatever. So we're pretty knowledgeable about what to do. We also have, of course, an attorney on staff. Tyler is always here to take a look at the legal part of it. We have good relationships with attorneys throughout the United States. One thing to keep in mind is a lot of these attorneys practice in multiple states. We have an attorney that practices in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. So you can build relationships with them, and they can get quite good at it. So Sabrina, thank you very much. Good to see you back home, and we will be back on next week. And I hope that we would like to expand the foreclosure into next week too. So get your questions in early. And then also be aware that notemogul.com, notemogul.com, our website where you can sign up to come to our seminar. The next one is in San Francisco, July 17th, 18th, and 19th. We look forward to seeing you there. And certainly foreclosures will be talked about in a lot more depth at that. So again, thank you for attending, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Sabrina.